Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it a minute or two to let everyone trickle in, and then we'll get started.
All right, y'all, we're gonna get started in like a minute. Just waiting for everyone to kind of hop on.
Perfect. All right, let's get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of HSA's Powerful Feminine series featuring powerful South Asian women from a diverse array of fields. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ishan Gupta. I am currently a sophomore in the SFS, majoring in Science, Technology, and International Affairs.
Cool. My name is Hasni. I am a junior also in the SFS. I'm studying comparative studies, and we will be your moderators today. And we are so excited to have you join our celebration of the Divine Feminine with this Navarātri speaker series. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and we will have some time at the end of our session to have Professor Joshi answer them. So today we are joined by Professor Joshi.
Perfect. So Professor Joshi is an applied microeconomist, and other than teaching at Georgetown, she teaches various topics such as maternal health, pollution, and women's programs in rural Indian communities specifically. She's been published in several various economic journals, as well as a consultant for the World Bank, the UN, and even for the government of India. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today, Professor Joshi. We're super appreciative and can't wait to hear from you and have you share all your experiences and all that you've worked on.
All right, so to kind of start things off, we just like to ask you, so you're an economist, so how did you choose economics as a field of study? And like, how did you decide what career you wanted to pursue?
Professor Joshi,
I
you're
think
on
you might
mute.
be on mute.
There we go. Yeah, it just worked for a second there.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I think you guys get to unmute. But before I say anything, thank you so much for inviting me. It is a huge honor to do this. It's one of the most creative celebrations of Navarātri I've ever seen, and I'm really excited to participate. So thank you. To answer your question, Hasni, about how did I end up being an economist, it's a strange path. I've had a very non-linear path. I don't believe I have the heart or the soul of an economist at all. You know, I am one of the last products or generations of the old school Nehruvian Gandhian India. I was born in the 70s during the emergency. Not that I remember that, obviously, but my childhood was very much shaped in those values of, the Indian freedom struggle and rebuilding a country and creating a national consciousness, if you will. My family was somewhat global. I was growing up in India, but I had relatives abroad. The inequality between my cousins' lives and mine was glaringly obvious. I didn't mind it, but the stark inequalities of the world, weighed on me even as a child. I really, really wanted to do something to make the world better somehow. Issues of poverty, issues of inequality, those always felt economic. It felt like it was about money somehow. So I started studying economics. I didn't even like it that much, but I was convinced that that was the answer, and very much in keeping with the kind of middle class values of Nehruvian India. I viewed as get an education, right? Like go get, and especially a Western liberal arts education. I don't know how I ended up from Jaipur, India to Reed College, Portland, but I needed a scholarship, and that's where I went because it was the one school which was willing to kind of take a bet on me, if you will. The Western liberal arts education is beautiful. It opens up your mind, right? It gives you this broad understanding of kind of the many ways of looking at complicated things. I think I stuck with economics out of that Indian sense of safety, study something which will get you a job, right? And the more I studied economics, actually, the less I liked it, to be honest, that the assumptions about rational individuals, how, you have utility and you have budget constraints and you optimize and somehow everything is okay. It never felt right to me. And the more I studied it, I didn't leave it. I wanted to study it in new ways, in different ways. And before I knew it, I was a scholar, right? When you critique a profession, it's better to do it from the inside. So I ended up doing a pre-doc at the Santa Fe Institute in New Mexico, which reminded me a lot of Rajasthan, where I grew up, somehow deserts, And then I ended up getting my PhD. And really, I was a little bit of an economist with a soul searching for a place. I ended up leaving academia for a little while, going and becoming a consultant at McKinsey, convinced that I should go out there and make the world a better place, right? I realized very quickly that I was too much of a scholar. I returned to the academy at Georgetown in the School of Foreign Service. This is a very interdisciplinary, school. That's really where I found expression. I found in the interdisciplinary world where I study issues at the boundaries of economics and lots of other things. That's where I found a voice, if you will, and a platform. So I don't know, I ended up being an economist somewhat accidentally and stuck with it. And here I am now, at the School of Foreign Service. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it was somewhat of a meandering journey.
No, I mean, I think like interdisciplinary work is the future of academia. And you've done a lot of powerful and impactful like intersectional kind of work, especially with like women and poverty in South Asia. I just would love to know more about kind of how those kinds of that kind of work came to be, and like how you kind of continue to push for that kind of intersectional view of economics in a field that is often dominated by that, rational consumer model and everything.
Yeah, that is definitely difficult. When you know what you want to do and you're in a context, in a profession where you are being discouraged from doing anything new, because first you have to prove that you are competent. You have to, as a PhD student, sit for your qualifying exams. You have to prove that you have mastered the existing body of knowledge before you prove that you are capable of generating credible new knowledge. That was an extremely difficult thing to go through, right? Because as I told you, I came to economics with a desire to kind of study things and understand the world, issues of social justice, issues of inequality, poverty. And if you go down the road of being a scholar and the PhD, the biggest frustration I had is it takes so long to get to the point where you can produce intersectional knowledge. You've got to first put down roots in a discipline before you can go interdisciplinary. If you want to, be heard in the world. And that was my biggest frustration. But what I will tell you, the good news is the fact that I'm here, at Georgetown. It is possible. You just have to have a lot of patience, and you have to have a lot of endurance if you want to do things, right? If you want to have impact, you have to constantly negotiate with yourself. What are my skills? Where do I want to have impact? Sometimes the skills you have, the impact you're going to have is small, then you have to go get more skills, right? And then you have to build relationships. So it is difficult but doable, like all good things in life. If you're patient and you are creative and you're willing to kind of endure, you might be lucky enough to actually end up roughly in the space of where you wanted. So
makes sense. Thank you so much for those insights. We're going to kind of zoom out a little bit of a loaded question, but specifically as like a woman in academia, and more specifically in like the field of economics, what changes have you kind of seen over the course of your career? And specifically, what is it like being a South Asian in academia and even at Georgetown?
yeah, so it's interesting. You're raising the issue of identity in the world of, academia, and you're raising the issue of an intersectional identity, right? Being a woman and being from South Asia. So there are really kind of multiple answers to that question. And I think every person will have their own narrative. So, I can only offer you kind of insights from my own path. But I will say, what to your question of what changes have I noticed? The profession of economics is a very conservative profession. I had the wonderful experience of being a postdoc at the University of Chicago, where I was one of 3 women, and I was the only South Asian in the economics department. And this place had like 4 Nobel Prize laureates, right? So it was, yeah, again, for someone who didn't love economics, how did I end up at the University of Chicago is a great question that I've never figured out the answer to. But for what it's worth, being the only woman and one of 3 women, and the only development economist and the only South Asian was a lonely experience. There's no doubt. When I think about the academic pipeline, for many years, 40% of graduate school PhD students were women. And yet the number of tenured professors in the profession of economics was in single digits. That has only just begun to change. So to answer your question, the baseline was not good, right? And now here I'm talking gender. We can talk South Asia in a second. The baselines are not encouraging. The good news is things have really started to change. And for your generation, right, if any of you are dreaming of getting that economics PhD, you are going to have a very, very different world to navigate. Issues about gender, issues about identity, barriers faced by women economists are very much in the open. There was a major landmark professional study of the American Economics Association 2 years ago, which found some horrible statistics. Something like half of all women, even who did survive and stay in the profession, reported massive levels of gender-based discrimination, harassment, barriers, difficulty getting published, difficulty getting promoted, difficulty getting recognized for their professional accomplishments. There are a variety of reasons for that, but gender really was a powerful one. So the fact that they did that study, and now across the academy, there is greater consciousness, there's greater understanding, there are conversations in every economics department, that's good news, right? Because it means 5 years from now, things will be really different. So change is definitely underway. On the issue of South Asia, there I would say, yes, we are a minority, right? However, India or South Asia has produced some of the most brilliant economists, right? Whether you think Amartya Sen or you think about, Raghuram Rajan, right? Like there are such brilliant economists who have played such a big role in the profession of economics that in some sense, I stand on the shoulder of giants. The problem I think we have is they're almost all men, right? And I literally say almost all men. the academy, being South Asian, being Indian, has intersected in odd ways, I would say. It's not always been a well-trod-on path. But even there, I would say that the profession of, this field of development economics, the study of India, the study of South Asia, it has enriched economics, right? South Asian economists have given to the profession of economics ideas, whether it was issues of gender inequality or Amartya Sen's work on famines, or, that there's a lot to be proud of the work of economists studying development and economics in general. So I don't know if I answered your question, Ishan.
No, that was perfect. Awesome. Haas, you want to jump with the next question?
Yeah, kind of like the last very, very career-oriented questions, but are there any projects that you're working on currently that you'd be able to share with us? And then kind of what subjects or topics are you interested in kind of doing research on or teaching on in the future?
Yeah, so my current topic, so even when you were introducing me, Ishan, you talked about maternal health and pollution and environmental degradation, and I wrote a paper on the caste system of India. Yeah, I kind of do new things, but the common thread really is issues of inequality, poverty, social justice, right? My newest project is I'm studying the Indian judiciary. I'm trying to look for systematic, I'm a data person. Obviously, we have a database of like 84 million observations, and we're studying the courts of India. And we're trying to understand issues of caste, religion, and gender in the courts of India. So it's keeping me kind of busy. 84 million observations. Studying it is hard. I don't always have the skills. I feel like a student again, because I have to learn new systems of working and managing data and studying data. But I want to get better at it. I feel every day inadequate when I look at the magnitude of the task ahead to study this. I do believe that Indians outside of India have a real responsibility to study things in India that are difficult to study in India. The judiciary is not something that is easy to study when you're living in India, right? For obvious reasons, it can get you into all sorts of trouble. I do feel that Indians outside the country can and should study questions like it. So we're doing that. We have this very big team across multiple time zones and from many different backgrounds, and we work together. So some Georgetown students are in it too, some alums, some current students. So it's like a big group effort, and I'm always happy to pull in new people, but it's a bit of a slog. So watch out what you volunteer for.
Awesome. Perfect. So we're going to jump into some audience questions now, as well as kind of change gears on the going from like your career to a little bit more on the spiritual side. So we received a question from the audience, which is, what inspires and nourishes your spirituality? And how do you see concepts like Dharma or Shakti show up in your work? And then if I can just add on something to that question is, specifically in this time of Navarātri, kind of what inspiration or energy do you draw from Navarātri as well? So hopefully you can unpack some of those questions.
Well, thanks for the question, Vineet. I will say I grew up in India, not hugely in touch with Hinduism. Again, I said I'm that last product, that last generation of Nehruvian India. I would say religion was very much relegated to this kind of private space. My family belonged to a kind of different tradition. We have a guru, and I did not grow up deeply in touch. A lot of that discovery actually has happened here at Georgetown, very much thanks to Brahmachari ji, and frankly, all of you, right? You students have given me that energy in the university, in the context of higher ed, really deep conversations about what is Dharma, I have come to that as a professor via all of you. So I'm grateful, the question gives me a chance to kind of thank you. Spaces like this have done a huge amount for me. Now, it's separately, like I've thought a lot about issues of spirituality, Dharma. From my early life, I very much connected with the essence of so many of the religions of the East, right? The emphasis on karma, being a good human being, think about righteous action. I read the Gita, very influenced by that. But the word you use, dharma, that has very much been at the center of my recent spiritual quest, because as a scholar, I constantly ask myself, what is my dharma? As a teacher, as a professor, as a mentor to students like you, what is my dharma? And I've come to this kind of conclusion over the years, and it's still a work in progress, that I think of dharma as sort of truth within, the truth within us. I think a good teacher for you is someone who helps you find the truth within you. As a scholar, my dharma lies in finding truth, whether it's that judiciary project or my paper on the caste system. I want to shed bias. I want objectivity. Dharma lies, do that extra bit of work to make sure your work is correct. There's no coding mistakes. Truth, seek truth rather than glory, right? Like I don't care to publish in the top 5 journal. I'll go lower if I have to, but I won't oversell my conclusion. I won't hide a result that undermines and I'm not saying other people do that, I don't know, but within myself, it's always err on the side of finding that truth within you. What do you truly believe? And as a mentor and as a teacher, I've more and more come to this view that, it is higher education is the time in your life where you find your purpose, you find the truth within you, your calling. And the more I can be part of that in the lives of students and other professors in the campus community, that's my dharma, I feel. And Navarātri, yeah, so, when I was at Yale, I was one of the people that would organize Garba. In Jaipur growing up, I was like a big Garba enthusiast, and Navarātri meant that. It meant good food, dressing up, and dancing. Now I'm older, I see in those circles, right? I like last year when I went to Navarātri, in those circles is some sort of message about life and new beginnings and, the constant circle of life. So that's where I've come.
I love that. I think I have something of a follow-up to all this, but I know you mentioned kind of earlier how, when you're working on this current project, you feel like you're a student again. And I think that was kind of resonated with me and the whole idea of like Dharma and seeking. And I'm just wondering whether you see that kind of seamlessness between, various like the Hindu dharmas kind of asking you to go out and ask those questions in kind of your work, if there's any kind of connection between kind of the way your dharma has kind of taught you to think and explore issues and the way you kind of do so in your profession.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, thanks to, these Sunday gatherings and Dharmic Life, I would say, for me, Hinduism has been a door through which I've connected with ancient pieces of wisdom, right? Whether it's the wisdom of the, mantras we chant, or it's the things we talk about, the timelessness, the universality of those themes. And yes, Hasini, absolutely. In every new opportunity, you can connect those kind of older, wise, ways of thinking, seeking truth, seeking depth. That is very much, whether it's going into a classroom or opening up a data set, tapping into your authentic self. Why am I doing this? What does it mean? And connecting it to something close to your search for truth in your life, it feels more and more, spiritual to me. And actually, that's a nice thing about Georgetown. I feel like we don't shy away from these kinds of big thoughts at Georgetown, right? And these values-based discussions. So, from that standpoint, I'm pretty grateful to have this chance.
Perfect. All right, we'll try to squeeze in 2 more quick questions from the audience before we wrap it up. So one question we actually have from Brahmachari-ji is, how has Dharma specifically enabled you to critique Hinduism?
Oh my God, that is such a good question, Brahmachari-ji. I should have known that you would ask something like that. How has my idea of Dharma, how has Dharma enabled me to critique Hinduism? I think what it has enabled me to do is realize that Hinduism was much more than what I saw growing up in India. What I saw growing up in India as a kid is people coming to school with symbols attached to them, some dhaga, some tilak, stories of, going to the temple. To me, it was very symbolic and very ritualistic, and it was always in the air that people, you do this, you do that. At Navarātri, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. When you grow up in India, you see Hinduism's manifestations kind of everywhere, and I liked it. But I never realized the kind of depth of thought behind it, right? So how has Dharma enabled me to critique Hinduism? It's let me realize that Hinduism's depth should not be gauged by the many kind of superficial manifestations that it has, right? Like, it's allowed me to critique where those things came from. I'm much more aware of the impact of colonialism on the emergence of Hinduism itself, on what people, what is Hindu law, family law, what rules do women have to live by. That Hinduism is not a product of Dharma, it's a product of colonial historical state action. And the critique I have come to is, if you go beyond those things and look for the spiritual depths of at the roots of Hinduism, you can see all that in a much more, so you're actually much more empowered to critique Hinduism. So I don't know if I answered that in a particularly eloquent way, but hopefully you know what I mean, Brahmachari ji.
Perfect. All right. So we are running up against the end of this webinar. So we are gonna kind of fuse two questions. So Vishal, who is an alumni of HSA, asked a question that we were gonna ask you as well. So if you can kind of address both parts of it in your answer. But Vishal says, like, obviously you've encouraged us to ask questions that we may be well equipped to answer about Hinduism in India. But specifically, what is your advice to alumni who are hoping to do this very thing in their profession, regardless of the field that we're in? So if you want to take a answer at that, and then we can wrap it up with just general students as well. So obviously we have students joining from Georgetown and Yale and Princeton and other DC schools. So in addition to alumni, do you have any advice for current college students who are listening today? If you can kind of answer both parts of that.
Yeah, I would say you're at a moment in your lives where your dharma is to figure out your true self. Who are you? What are you good at? Right? As a professor, I'll say it's what exactly are you good at? Right? What skills can you truly build that are unique to kind of that fit with your values and your persona? Right? Go out there, figure out who you are and what skills you want to acquire. That's one thing you have to do, but simultaneously think about what do you want to do in terms of, I'm not talking, I want this internship or I want that internship, but what do you want to do in the world, right? Like, what impact do you want to have? And defining that as small is actually good. I'm not one of those people who says students should have these big lofty ideas of, I want to go out and solve global poverty. No, maybe define very narrow goals, but have your goals and your skills match. When you don't succeed, realize there's great value in not succeeding. Sometimes your true self, your dharma becomes evident through not succeeding. You learn a lot about yourself, right? You rule something out for yourself. Embrace that. And I would say just never, ever be diffident about trying again. Remember the circles we talked about? When something closes, something else opens again. Life does move in circles. I feel like so many students view their life as a highway, right? The super highway where they want to see into the distance and know where they're going and get there fast. No, discovering yourself along the way means you have to take tons of different twists and turns and enjoy them in their own way. So that's dharma in some sense, is discovering yourself.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate you and everyone who came to listen to you and talk about your wonderful accomplishments and your advice. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for helping us celebrate the second day of Navarātri 2020.
Thank you again. It was a huge honor to be invited. I was thrilled to join, so thank you.
And to everyone else, we hope you will join us tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week as we continue to celebrate Navaratri. Tomorrow, the session is from 5 to 5:30, and we will be joined by Professor Krishnan, who is another one of our Georgetown professors. And last thing is we hope to see you soon at Aarti at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.